there, Trekkers and Trekkies. This is going to be sort of a part 2 on mold casting. I showed you how I do a basic head mold cast last week, or last video. This week I'm going to be showing you how I do a shrink mold, which is where I'm going to be taking the silicone, mixing it with some stuff, get there in a minute, and causing it to where after we cast the head, the silicone itself will slowly shrink. It takes about a week for it to completely off gas and shrink down to the size that we want. And what we're going to be using is this guy. I'm going to show you here. It's actually a casting of a Mego Neptunian. Back in the 70s, Mego did the 8-inch figures of Star Trek figures, which eventually I'm going to get around to making one to go with my Mego figures using this head. But I want to make a Neptunian in Playmates scale, which if I hold up Mr. Worf here, you're going to see his head is massive compared to Worf there. So I need to get this significantly smaller. So what I'm going to be doing is we're going to make a cast of it. We're going to get it set up to make a cast of it. And then we're going to mix up our silicone. I'm going to slap my other camera. And then we'll make it, and hopefully eventually we might have to do a double casting because of the way that the math has to work on mixing the silicone for shrinking. That's what I had to do with because I actually did a test run of this a while back on the Candyman figure that I used to make the elder version of Jake Sisko. Now, if you saw my previous video, hopefully you've watched that to see how I make the molds. One of the things that's going to be important is that when I glue this into, I'm going to be using the bottom section of this cup. I'm going to be cutting it off so that it's not going to be a problem. And I'm going to be gluing it a head up like this, but I'm going to tilt the head back at just a little bit of an angle so that I know that when I go to make the castings in the future, I don't have to worry about any bubbles or anything in the lower part of the head. And it's not going to be, they're not going to be dramatic. It's just going to be just a very slight tilt back. And I'll show you that it's going to fit perfectly in there. Like I said, I just need to cut it off right there, which that'll be the next thing I do. I'm going to go cut the cup. I'm going to cut the cup and then glue the head down, and then when we come back, then we'll start mixing some chemicals. Okay, welcome back. So, got him set up in the cup. You can see there's just a tiny bit of a tilt so you can get all the details real good. So the way that we are going to do this, now you remember in the previous video I showed you Mold Star 15, and I showed you the instructions, talked about how long the mix time is and all that. Well, we're going to kind of get rid of all that, because what we're going to do is you're still going to be doing the 50-50 ratio of the two parts. But then we're going to be adding odorless mineral spirits. And we're going to be doing an equal amount of the mineral spirits to the silicone. The purpose being is that as the silicone off-gasses, the mineral spirits, the mineral spirits will gas off from the silicone and make this. The silicone will then gradually shrink. Takes about 7 or 8 days to do that. But what I will have to do is after I pour this, I'll leave it for about 24 hours. At which point I then need to remove the actual mold head. And what's going to happen is that the silicone is going to continue to hold the shape at that point, but then it's going to start shrinking. So I want to get that out of there, because then if I leave it in there, it's going to be too big for the shrinking process, and it will rip it open. So don't want that to happen. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to measure 1 part of each of these and get them in my big cup. And then I'm going to measure 2 of the shot glasses of mineral spirits. And get that mixed into the big glass. And then we'll get that thoroughly mixed and pour it over the head. And hopefully that will be enough. Okay, this is why you probably ought to measure, but it's okay. This is a really, really small amount that all we need to add is very, very little. So, I'm going to do a half, which you can, there's actually lines inside these shot glasses. And then I'm going to put the same amount of mineral spirits. I'm making sure to keep the ratio the same. Which is one thing that we will need to talk about in just a moment. Okay. Let's see. Let's get this thoroughly mixed up. Come on. All right. And I've got a place where I pour off leftover junk silicone. I've got another cup somewhere where I actually pour any excess resin, which I try not to ever have. I try to always have a mold available, but sometimes I'll just make a cup so that I can just pour any excess in there and give the excess. It turns into this big puck that I give to a friend of mine who does woodworking. And so he gets a kick out of that. Okay. Let's let that air out. So, real quick, let's talk ratios. So I did 50-50 on this guy because it is such a big head that I know I need it to shrink at least this certain amount. Now, I have done these before where I did more than 50-50. I did more mineral spirits than I did silicone, and that was a bad idea. It took ages and ages. It never really thoroughly dried out. It didn't shrink properly. So don't do more than 50-50. Now, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll do thirds. I'll do 1/3 A, 1/3 B, and then 1/3 mineral spirits. So you can measure it out that way. And the thing I figured out if I do the 1/3 option with 6-inch scale, which is 1/12 scale figures. Sorry, I just saw something that was making me nervous on my table. That I can do the 1/3 ratio, and it comes out the perfect amount. So that means it's shrinking it from 1/12 to 1/14, which is about 15%. So in other words, if you're doing thirds, then you should expect about a 15% shrinkage. And if you're doing half and half like I did, you should probably expect about a 30% shrinkage. So that means that this 1/9 scale figure's head, when it gets done, is going to be around the size of a 1/12 to 13th. It's not. This is not an exact science. It's a funky chemicals thing. If at some point somebody gets it figured out, that would be cool. But I can't. I don't have the exact measurements yet. So, like I said, if you do the 50/50, you should expect about a 30% reduction. Which means that then I'm going to have to do another shrink. I'll have to take and make a mold of that one that will shrink by another 15% in order to get the scale head that I want. It also means I could use this mold once it's done to make heads for 6-inch figures, if I really want to. So at this point, just going to let that sit, like I said, for about 24 hours until it firms up and I can get the Neptunian head out of it. So I will see you in 24 hours. All right. Well, it's now been about 13 or so hours. It's essentially hard. It's very, very bouncy. But that's because it now has to do a lot of off-gassing. But like I told you, I need to remove the head from inside of there. Because as the rubber mold starts to shrink, if that head is inside of there and the head's not allowing it to shrink, it can rip the silicone. So let's get this out. There we go. Got a knife just in case. I don't know that I'm going to need it. If I loosen this just right, because this is really super stretchy right now. And if yeah, there we go. I just felt it loosen, and I can now got him out. So now I'm gonna stick this up on my shelf and wait for about 7 or 8 days to let this off gas and shrink. And that's part of why I saved this cup mold, is because I want to be able to, when we come back, I want to show you how much this has shrunk. Because remember, we did a 50/50, 50% silicone rubber, 50% of the thinner. So it's going to shrink quite a bit. But that's probably not going to be the end of it. I'm probably going to have to do one more shrink on this head in order to get it down to the Playmate size. So, I'm going to cut, and the next time I see you, or the next time you see me, that's the right way that sentence works, it should be about a week. So I'll make sure and wear the exact same shirt in 8 days just to really piss somebody off. All right, we'll be right back. All right, so we have arrived at 13 days since we started shrinking the mold that we made, which I've got right here. I did label the bottom of it so it says Neptunian, so that I can hopefully remember what it is that I've been doing. So let's switch over and take a look. So this is the mold. Like I said, it's been shrinking for 13 days. This was the cup that we used, and remember I put this head into the cup, kind of like that, glued in, poured the stuff in like that, and you should notice, look how much space there is surrounding the mold now. In fact, I'll flip it over and you can tell that there's a full crescent shape around that. And so it has shrunk down. About all it's going to shrink. I think, yeah, there's a tiny bit of the smell of the thinner left to it. So, I mean, the thing is, though, at this point, it's not going to shrink by much. Much more, I should say. It's just about done. And I basically, I left it alone for a full week. And then starting on about the 8th day, I would check the smell every day, and depending on how strong it was, which on the 8th day, it was still incredibly strong. So, that is that. Now, you're probably wondering, so how much have we shrunk things? Well, just before I started the video, I made this using the new mold. You should be able to tell that it is a decent amount smaller. Let me grab my ruler here. Let's start by measuring the original, which from the nose to the back of the head was about 3 3/4 centimeters. Actually, no, that might have been full on 4. Let me. Yeah, sorry, I realized I was holding it wrong. So, I'll show you there. It's actually just a little past 4 millimeters. And the new one, let me get his nose the same way, aligned with the front line. And you'll see that this one's just barely past 3.5, about 3 3/4 or so. So it has shrunk. The front to back has shrunk by a full millimeter or centimeter. I keep saying millimeter. Let's see, about top of head to neck is about 3 centimeters on that, and it's 2.5 on the new one. I'll hold that up so you can see that. And let's see if I can measure the width of the head on the original. It's about 2.5 centimeters. And the new one is right on 2 centimeters. So it lost about 0.5 centimeter in head width. This one would now be good for about a 6-inch scale, which would be like the Black Series Star Wars figures, about a 6 to 7-inch figure, or a 1/12 is really what this equates to, which means that I do need to do another shrink on this, which should at that point hopefully bring it down to Playmate's scale, which I've got a wharf figure here, and you can see that, like, if I was to just switch out the head, this one would still look kind of large, but the Neptunians are known for a fairly large size head anyways. But that is it for this particular video. So if I remember to, I will try, and if I get it done before this video gets posted on YouTube, I'll add another clip just showing the difference in the head size. If not, pay attention to my Facebook and my Instagram, and I'll post pictures there in the next coming weeks or so of that. So yeah, thanks for checking this out, and I'll see you next time.
If you enjoy my videos and want to see more, please like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon. Also, you can support the show by signing up on Patreon, or head over to Zazzle to pick up prints of my artwork, prints on canvas, t-shirts, and other merch. You can find me on social media. For more information and updates on the channel, all info is below. If you didn't enjoy the video, why are you still here? Do you want a song? Ba, ba, black sheep, have you any wool? Yes, them, 3 bags full. 1 for the master, who can screw himself. You can listen to somebody else.